What's up everyone, MK Tom Brady here. In this video, I want to take a look at a couple of tweets that went out over the weekend, starting with this from Big D. He says, there's been lots of talk recently about how MK11 needs a patch and needs more characters. I just want to remind everyone that video game developers owe us literally nothing. Is it hard to just be grateful for what we already have? If not, just find something else to play. And I like that he also continued on this and elaborated on his thought process, because he said people are misunderstanding what he's saying. Wanting more communication, roadmaps and such is totally justified. He understands that. He understands that critique. But he's talking about those who think additions to the game are required every few months. And Ultra David also hit on this point. He says it's exhausting to see how many people are demanding more changes when the last one was not even 3 months ago, and the last major content update before that was only a couple of months before that. Being a dev subjected to that kind of behavior must really suck. And he's talking about, look, we get Ultimate, where you get customized variations, now in competitive play, 3 DLC characters, and then 2 or 3 months later, actually less than 3 months later, people are saying, boring, where's the content? Hello, NetherRealm, it's been 2 or 3 months since we've gotten anything. This is what he's talking about. Like every 2 or 3 months, people feel entitled to, give me my content, give me my new content. And this is what Big D is talking about. Does the game need more characters, need more patches? Characters. In 24 months, we have received 12 DLC characters. That is a ton of, that is unheard of for a fighting game. Fighting games don't get that type of content that much. That's an average of 1 character every 2 months, on average. That is amazing. Then patch, we got 12 characters in 24 months. In that 24-month period, we also got, they gave us a 3rd tournament variation. Then they gave us an expansion to story mode. Then they gave us a new mechanic in armor break. Then they gave us the ability to use customized variation in competitive play. I'd say we've had a ton of new patches, right? And a ton of new characters. So for those who are saying, hello, more content please, it's been a couple of months, he just wants to remind you, they don't owe you that. They don't owe you any more characters. They don't owe you any of that stuff, right? Could you want more characters? Sure. Do they owe it to you? No. Be grateful because they have given us a ton of new content over the last 2 years. Be grateful. And if not, if that's not good enough for you, you can find something else to play. And I stand with him on that. Here's where he's wrong, though, in one area. Developers owe us literally nothing. Now, if you go to a restaurant and certain service or food, the product, which is the food, was advertised a certain way, and you were dissatisfied in that you feel the food and or the service is not what was advertised for the money they're charging, yes, you do have a right to complain. And they do owe it to you to deliver the type of service and food that they are advertising to bring in customers. Mortal Kombat 11 is the same way. But how do you prove that? I mean, if you're someone who paid money for this game, especially if you bought it from day one where you're spending $165 for all the updates, and you feel like it is owed to you, like, hey, NetherRealm, you sold me an unfinished product. If you feel that, yes, they do owe you a finished product. But how do you prove that? Can you prove that people that want breakaways changed or fatal blows changed, can you prove that's unfinished? No. How can you prove that was not the original idea all along? How can you prove that's the result of the game being unfinished? You cannot. Lucky for us, in MK11, you can prove. So let's take how characters are put together. In MK11, characters are put together kind of interesting. I don't think I've ever seen something like this before, where the base version of a character is designed and then their moves are plugged in. So Raiden, for example, his base was designed independent from the additional moves. So by base, he's got his lightning bolt, his straight lightning, then he has his Summon Lightning, he has his Lightning Strike, and then he has his Electric Fly. So he's got those 4 moves by default. All the rest of the moves that populate this menu here were all designed separate from his default loadout. Now, this could be kind of tough because you can take a character who has a default loadout and then design moves separate from the default version of the characters. You might make a move that's a little too strong for what the move does, combined with what the character does by default. But NRS has designed a system to prevent that, a slotting system, where you have 3 slots to occupy, and based on how powerful a move is, the slot value is higher. If a move is not as strong, the slot value is lower. And this is their way of ensuring, whether it's them putting together a tournament variation or you putting together your own customizable variation, you can avoid certain things from being way over the top. And let's take a look at what I mean by this. So, okay, how can we prove this is incomplete? Well, you have moves that are really not very strong. Take, for example here, Katana's Edenian Fade. This move is 2 slots. This move is terrible. It's unusable. Jackie's Bionic Bounce, even if you don't put in Shrapnel, Bionic Bounce is a full screen combo starter. Keep in mind, when this move was assigned 1 slot, it didn't even have a resource. So at that point, she could leap full screen without spending any defensive meter and get a full combo. Even without her Shrapnel, her Enhanced Air Blast, as the move is called, she could do full screen leap, jump in with punch, forward 1-2, grease kick amplify, and that is a full combo into a launcher where she can continue the combo. So because she has a launcher by default, this move right here is a full screen combo starter. This move does literally nothing. Yet this move here is considered 2 slots, and a move 1,000 times more powerful is 1. This game is filled with these type of examples, where you have some of the most powerful moves in the game are a 2 slot, or I should say a 1 slot value. So moves that are like, oh my gosh, this move is so strong, 1 slot. Then a move that is terrible, that does almost nothing, is a 2 slot value. So it's kind of whack. It's not really based that way. There's enough evidence to say it's not really based on how strong a move is. You would say, in theory, it's meant to be based that way, but the way characters are put together are not really based on how strong a move is equal to how its point value and slotting is. And that throws how characters are made way out of whack, and why you get characters like Cetrion and characters who are far less powerful. The slotting is way off. Same thing with like a launcher, right? You can have a launcher that's 1 slot and a launcher that's 2. The launcher that's 1 slot is very good. Said character might have the launcher in a situation where their default already has 1 or 2 default launchers, right? Then there's like Raiden's Joe Push. Not only is it a garbage launcher, but he doesn't really have any type of default launchers like that. And they put this in a variation that, why? Why is this launcher 2? So he's penalized with how much he could have crammed into it. And it's the same problem with custom. You can't use it. And other characters can, I can have 3 launchers because, I have 2 launchers by default. I throw in a 3rd launcher that's only 1 slot. And now I have 2 other moves that do this or that. It's all, the point value of the move makes no sense. There's nothing to it. And for those that'll say, well, Tom, look, it's not based on power level, it's based on how many moves. He got the Ermac move, he got the Rain move, he got the Reptile move, so you got the, right? And then, and all these moves right here, he got all this stuff, and it's 3 moves for 3 slots, Tom. Look, there are moves in this game that have 2 or 3 kind of applications to the way that they become 2 or 3 moves, and they're still 1 slot. So it doesn't really matter. Now, here's where you get to the proof part. How can you prove? Like, you would have to prove that NRS, specifically before this game was launched, actually had in their head they were going to go back in or can go back in based on the feedback and reslot certain moves or change the properties of a move or change the properties of a move and reslot it based on that new property. Where's the proof, Tom? I'm glad you asked. Thank God there are articles. This comes from an article before MK11 was released. NetherRealm then plans to this comes from an interview with all type of designers, Ed Boon, etc. This comes from what was told to them directly. NetherRealm then plans to balance custom abilities. Are these custom abilities, right? These are custom abilities, right? I think so, yes. When necessary, with these specific variations in mind. Oh, those are tournament variations, Tom. Raiden's Joe Push, anyone? Is that not a tournament variation? Thank you very much. I continue. And also change the variations themselves. Depending on feedback from the community, they can swap moves in and out and make certain moves take up 2 slots instead of 1. So by this article, NRS, before the game was even launched, what they did was, before what they probably did, they already had in mind that they can go back in, take a look at a move and say, wow, this is a 2-slot move, it should be 1. Wow, this is a 1-slot move, it should be 2. They can take a move and say, wow, this is a selectable move, it should be default. And they can take a default move and make it selectable, and make a selectable move and make it default, just to kind of make the character a little more well-rounded, or just in general when kind of switching out what a character can or can't do based on that level of freedom they're trying to achieve within this variation system. So by the NRS's own admittance, they already had planned that they can always go in and change these things. Have they swapped any moves in and out? No. Have they changed any slotting? No. None of this has happened. This is before the game came out. They fully intended, hey, we can change the properties of a move and then the slotting and then swap moves in and out, etc. And it was never done. So, yes, it is incomplete. The very foundation of how these characters are put together is grossly incomplete. And that's why the game is so dull and is so boring, and some characters have all the options and some characters have none. So, yes, does it need more characters and need this and need that? No. But do you owe it to us to finish the game that you sold us? Hell yes, you do. And this line of thought is why they get away with never doing it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm always curious to hear what you guys have to say. Again, I do respect Big D, and he's right on so many things. But he's wrong on owe us literally nothing. Because when it comes to, do you owe it to us to finish the game that you obviously released incomplete with the thought process of, oh, we can always go back in later and do yada, yada, yada. Ship it out the way it is, and then we'll just take a look at it and go back in and move these things around. You didn't. You told us you could. You told us you could. You told us you plan. They plan to balance that. You plan to balance the game like this? Well, when do you plan on doing this, NetherRealm? So yes, on that front, you do owe it to us. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay tuned for more content.